Apologize. Ba'anin Indigenous Kazayan, Shayla Ndunjiba, Jasa Giswa, Jamaica Nindunde Makwa. So I just wanted to introduce myself in my native tongue. My name is Shayla Bolio. I am a graduate student at Marquette University, studying student affairs and higher education. And
Yeah, my name is Anathea. I'm a senior at Marquette and I'm studying sociology and peace studies. I'm also a programming assistant at the Center for Peacemaking. And yeah, I will give a little introduction. So the Honors Office and the Center for Peacemaking created this panel for those with justice-centered values who are interested in humanities degrees. We really wanted to provide real-life experiences of how Marquette alumni have used their degrees within different career paths while prioritizing social justice. Their involvement has contributed to their success, and we are grateful to hear about their experiences tonight. So we'll give a little bio of each of our panelists, starting with Curtis Taylor. Curtis graduated from Marquette in 2013 in international business, operation supply chain management, and helped craft the inaugural Middle Eastern and North African studies with a concentration in the Arabic language. He minored in social welfare and justice, as well as philosophy. During his time at Marquette, Curtis studied abroad at John Cabot University in Rome, Italy, was an RA of McCormick Hall, rest in peace, founder of the Quidditch team, a member of NRHH PPT for MUSG, executive on Winter Flurry, a member of Psi Psi chapter of Kappa Sigma fraternity, served 3 years on IFC and worked in the Center for Peacemaking and the Office of International Affairs. After Marquette, Curtis received a Master's of Education in Curriculum and Instruction with a concentration in College Student Affairs program at the University of South Florida. His assistantships in Greek Village, and Muma College of Business as the program coordinator of the Business Honors Program. His concentrated research on NCAA LGBTQIA+ athlete experiences and coaching. Curtis also founded and coached a club quad ball team and worked in fraternity and sorority life at the University of Tampa. Currently, he works at Creighton University in the Creighton Intercultural Center as the Associate Director of Multicultural Organizations and Programming. He also serves as the head coach and founder of Creighton Quad Ball team and as the assistant head coach for the women's soccer at the College of St. Mary's and an interactive workshop facilitator for Campus Speak. His other interests include planning his wedding, coaching, Premier League soccer, Liverpool, movies, holistic wellness, fitness, and traveling.
thank you for coming. So the next person we have is Katie Shea. Katie Shea, she, her pronouns. Katie Shea is Associate General Counsel and Director of Human Rights at Cisco Systems Incorporated. She leads Cisco efforts to integrate human rights perspectives into the way that Cisco conducts business throughout the value chain. Prior to joining Cisco, Katie served as Business and Human Rights Counsel at Yahoo, where she managed human rights programs related to privacy and freedom of expression across the global business. Katie earned her JD from Georgetown University Law Center and her BA in English Literature from Marquette University.
All right, and then we have Sophia. Sophia is a graduate of the Marquette University Honors Program with degrees in English Literature and Philosophy. She then earned her law degree from the University of Wisconsin Law School and practiced for over 3 years in the Milwaukee community as a civil attorney at a nonprofit law firm. There, she co-managed Milwaukee's eviction defense program, working to reduce housing instability for low-income families through direct court representation and community outreach and education on tenants' rights. She is currently the Assistant Director of the Marquette University Honors Program. As Assistant Director, she advises honor students in a range of issues, including curriculum requirements, academic path and career discernment, community internships, adjusting to college, and Milwaukee engagement. She also teaches a first-year honors core class, and she co-leads our honors peer mentorship program, where she where current students provide mentorship for incoming honor students. Additionally, she serves as the staff liaison for the Honors Program Student Advisory Board. She continues to practice housing law on a pro bono basis through the Marquette University Law School Community Legal Clinics and is happy to connect with students interested in law school and local nonprofit work.
Then our next panelist is Colleen Ross, she, her pronouns. Colleen graduated from Marquette's College of Arts and Science, where she majored in international affairs and minored in economics and political science. During her time at Marquette, she studied abroad with CASA. I'm totally going to butcher this, but I do apologize. Bianian, which was an alternative study abroad program in the Jesuit tradition in Manila, and also interned in Milwaukee at Local Initiative Support Corporation. Colleen also spent a summer studying in Les Aspen Center and interning in the Washington, D.C. Office of Congresswoman Gwen Moore, a fellow Marquette alum. During her time at Marquette, Colleen volunteered with Midnight Run, attended many programs organized by the Center for Peacemaking, and participated in Marquette Action Program, spring break trips. After graduation, Colleen moved to Washington, D.C. to work as a government relations associate at Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice, where she worked on advancing Network's legislative goals and health and tax policies on Capitol Hill. After her year with the government relations team, Colleen applied for a position on the communications team, where she served for the next 7 years, eventually being promoted to the role of communication director. During the time, Colleen also completed her master's in strategic communication at American University. So yeah, we just want to say thank you to everyone for coming tonight. We definitely appreciate it. So the first question is for everyone. So the first question is, how did you go about choosing your career path and prioritizing justice-driven values?
Anyone can start.
I can start. It's been a while since I was a student at Marquette, but I still sort of viscerally remember what it was like senior year as an English lit major, wondering what the heck am I going to do with myself, and all the focus that Marquette placed on discernment, like discerning what your career path, your vocation was going to be, but also these values that were instilled in us as students at Marquette, Cura Personalis, in particular, it stays with me. And when I was a senior, I did not know what I wanted to do. I was searching, and one of the great things about Marquette was the very strong community among the students and among my group of friends, who were all very socially minded and looking to enter careers that had some social justice component to it. And so I remember sort of sitting around in people's apartments talking about, well, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? And the theme that was sort of bubbling up was a lot of people were thinking about doing volunteer service for their time post-graduation, whether they were going into the Jesuit voluntary service. I had a friend who went into the Mennonite volunteer service. I myself did AmeriCorps Vista. And, we all sort of wanted to learn more about where we could go and take our talents and the values that were instilled in us at Marquette through volunteership. And so I ended up doing a year in AmeriCorps Vista in Milwaukee Public Schools. I really wanted to stay in Milwaukee. And in that year, I felt like my eyes were just opened to the reality of what a lot of people in Milwaukee were living with, the challenges that these students were living with that I didn't really appreciate even when I was living as a student just down the street. Actually, one of the schools I worked in was on Wisconsin Avenue, right across from the public library. So, blocks away from Marquette, but I had never interacted with these students until I had the opportunity to work in their school. And this was also 2008, and Barack Obama was running for president. His mantra was hope and change. And in that year, I was still sort of figuring out, well, how do I take these learnings forward? And it was through that experience and sort of sitting with the values that we, had kind of drilled into us in a very positive way at Marquette. And in that moment in our sort of history that I decided what I really wanted to do was go to law school, and that I was especially interested at studying the intersection of law and policy and figuring out like how can we build systems that support people better. And that took me to Washington, D.C. for law school and into a path as a human rights lawyer. So happy to expand on that more, but that it was really kind of those seeds that were planted at Marquette, those conversations with my friends who were, having similar hopes and dreams, and then experience working in the Milwaukee community that set me on that path.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
I guess I can go. Hi, everyone. I guess I drank the Jesuit Kool-Aid. Here I am at Creighton. Can't get out, can't get away. But I'm a weird one. Even in student affairs, I was a business kid turned student affairs pro. So I realized my senior year working for Walkwell Automation and receiving a job offer post-grad that I wanted nothing more than to get away from corporate America. That it was the wrong path, but we were so far down it that like we're gonna finish, and that like all of the core classes and really the stuff that I minored in and the opportunities that I had on campus, I was that over-involved kid. I also apologize. We have a Native Dance Expo happening right now, and that's probably what you hear in the background. I'm the programmer, so dual hat kind of deal, but for me, it was, I enjoyed my involvement at Marquette, the opportunity to give back and create experiences for folks so much more than sitting in a cube and teamsing people. And that was not my lived experience. So I went to grad school. I wanted a large public school just to try to see if it was different and how different it was. I recognized after coming out of a Jesuit school that all of the questions people ask you in job interviews relate back to mission, vision, and values, and like being ingrained in our development at a Jesuit school. Like those are such easy questions to answer. Whereas people like, usually we trip people up here, and I'm like, how? Like, how do you not look at the mission of the institution or where you're going and what you're doing and see that as an opportunity to like see if it aligns or not? So for me, that was huge. Even my professors at USF were Jesuits. So from Creighton and from Canisius. So like you can't get away from them. I promise. Wherever you go, you will find someone Jesuit educated. And then now I'm here at Creighton. The job and the opportunity here to work with multicultural student organizations and programming has been huge. It's an amazing opportunity to be within the community and then also create community here on campus for our students at the margins. So it's I've been here 8 years, and it's life-giving, and I attest all of that back to Marquette. Like it was a great place that allowed me. I think a lot of people would say, oh, you lived in Tampa, Florida, and you're a gay Middle Eastern man and you want to move out to Nebraska, like why? And then if it's for a Jesuit school, I'll literally move to Antarctica. So I think that's what I tell everyone. Like I didn't plan to go back so quickly to the Jesuits, but like my last two offers, MU in Los Angeles and here for a job. So I was like, I guess I'm going back to the Jesuits.
That's awesome. Thank you.
I can hop in. Hey everyone, I'm Sophia, and Taylor, actually, I'm from Miami, Florida, and I actually moved to Wisconsin in the Midwest for the first time in my life to attend Marquette. So I feel like there's some parallels there.
Why? They're like, why would you do that? But they just don't know. I get it.
Yeah. I accepted my position. Like I accepted being a student at Marquette before I had even visited Wisconsin, but it ended up working out really great for me. So it was definitely a culture shock. In choosing my career, I think, I mirror what both Taylor and Katie have said about sort of Marquette's values and mission, and sort of thinking about like a person holistically, like the Cura Personalis motto. And I think going to school in Milwaukee, coming from Miami, such a different community, Marquette gave me such meaningful opportunities to connect with the city I was in. So I ended up interning for a community organization called Pan-African Community Association, where I was working alongside refugees getting resettled here in the States. I also interned with the Milwaukee Justice Center that was located and still is located in the Milwaukee County Courthouse, which was literally a block or two north of where I was living in Strass Tower. So those experiences really helped shape the career that I chose. I did go to law school right after Marquette University, and in law school, again, I had really meaningful experiences at the UW Law School in Madison, working with incarcerated individuals with the Wisconsin Innocence Project. I was on that project for a year. And I also worked with immigrants in sort of establishing their citizenship here or what rights they had. And I knew I wanted to work with populations who had trouble accessing legal resources. So I didn't necessarily, I wasn't committed to an area of law specifically. I had really focused on criminal law and employment discrimination. But I knew at the end of the day, I would take a job in the nonprofit sector or in the government sector if it was working with people who were sort of experiencing that justice gap. And so that's why I chose to work with Legal Action of Wisconsin, which is our statewide civil legal aid firm, which basically means we're funded by the federal government to help low-income community members facing civil issues that can't otherwise afford legal help. So I actually was put into elder rights law and housing law, and I had no experience doing that type of law. But again, I knew I was working with the populations and the communities I wanted to connect with. And so sort of being proximate and relationship building within that helped me open my eyes to sort of the intersectionality, right, that everyone sort of faces when they're in a cycle of poverty or disenfranchisement. Yeah, so that's sort of definitely Marquette had a big hand in me choosing my career in that way.
Sophia, you must not have visited Marquette from Miami in the winter.
No, it was a sunny June day.
Very good. I grew up in the Midwest and was very familiar with the winters, although visited Marquette with a friend also from the Metro Detroit area, and she said, no, Marquette it's too cold for me even. So I also, like fellow panelists here, had a lovely experience at Marquette. Definitely similar to Katie, approached senior year not exactly sure what my job was going to be. Not like all those business majors who had their jobs lined up. So don't worry if you are in your senior year or get to your senior year spring semester and aren't quite sure. Plenty of us turn out fine. So I studied international affairs and thought I was interested in international politics or the realm of international politics and development and things like that, and studied abroad and said, oh, the world is a big place. You were super close to the pronunciation, Kasabay Nihan. So that was in Metro Manila in the Philippines. And it did strike me while I was studying abroad how much just ground level learning there was to do. And I said, probably folks who are born and raised and live in this context actually are much better equipped to tackle those problems. Though, not to write off the entire world of international affairs or development or anything like that. But I said, maybe not for me. And so then shortly after my study abroad semester, I had a great experience interning in Washington, D.C. In one of the congressional offices, and said, there's a lot that we can do domestically that needs to be done. Like many folks have said, those kinds of lived experiences that you learn from, and kind of caught the bug for congressional politics. And then to put one more wrinkle in it, my senior year, I came back to campus and interned with a group doing local neighborhood development in Milwaukee, and said, wait, but this is super interesting too. The, public-private partnerships and really on-the-ground stuff, and you can see a project come to fruition. And almost was tempted to stay in that, but I got the offer to go out to DC and work at Network Lobby for Catholic Social Justice, which does federal level lobbying. And I said, all right, I'll do that. And if I want to do something different, I can do that down the road. And 8 years later, I'm still there. So definitely, it's good to have a chance to try out different things, walk a path a little ways and see what is most interesting to you. I definitely think that like any skill set that you're interested in pursuing, any career path, maybe not certain corporations if you find yourself doing things you disagree with, but for the most part, most skill sets, most interests that you have can certainly be, I think, oriented for good. So it's probably just about finding the one that's right for you.
Awesome. Thank you all for those very insightful and informative responses. Okay, our next question. You all have been through some sort of graduate program at like different stages. What are any tips you have for students who are looking to pursue a graduate program after graduating to better prepare themselves for that experience?
Rankings do not matter. Grad school is grad school. Specifically within like a master's of education and higher education. Everyone always talks about, oh, the Colorado States, who else? Vermont, all these other like big name schools. It's just like, no, like I work in the same place as someone that went to Colorado State. Like we have the same title and in different roles. And like I think the hardest part is when you're thinking about graduate school, it's amazing to go to get in. And also remember that once you're in a program, it hurts the institution more that you don't do well than for you to do well. So take advantage of all the resources and opportunities as someone that works at an institution. Like your ability to graduate is super important to us, especially if you're in grad professional schools. So like we are there to help in any capacity or any way possible. But like I said, like if you're looking for a top 10 program or this or that, like truly the content is there. Find a fit, find a place that you feel comfortable, because it's 2 to 4 to 6 years of your life that you have to spend a lot of time at and enjoy it. So enjoy where you're at, try a new place. Like my mom always said, you can do anything for 2 years, just go. So like take that advice and take that ability to like, I didn't get into the #1 program. That's cool. Like my program, not amazing, not the best. It's almost folded twice since I graduated 8 years ago. But at the same time, I feel like an amazing professional because I was in the trenches. I'd had a lot of lived experiences and like I found a program that fit exactly what I needed as a professional. So like trust your gut on a lot of those things. That's my advice.
I disagree a little bit. I think it depends on the field that you want to go into. And Sophie, I'm curious your thoughts on this too, as a fellow lawyer. But I think if you want to go into the law, it matters a little bit. Like it's not the only thing, but I also would not waste your money going to law school somewhere that's not very reputable. Because it does matter a little bit. That doesn't mean you can't be successful if you don't go to a top tier law school. You absolutely can be successful, but it will just be a little bit harder. The other thing that's maybe more in line with what Taylor was saying that I agree with and that I would add to is look at the whole picture though, right? So like if you are going to go on the legal path, ranking might be one factor, but other factors would include whether they have a strong program in the type of law that you want to practice and who their faculty are and what other sorts of opportunities you would have as a student in that program. So at the law school that I went to, for example, there's a very strong emphasis on clinical learning, which means it's like practical learning. You spend a semester essentially like it's sort of like an internship or a fellowship, but it's full-time, you get credit for it. And that was like the most impactful part of my legal education because I actually got to do the work. A lot of lawyers will tell you, the LSAT, which is the entrance exam, does not measure how well you will do in law school, and law school does not prepare you to be a lawyer or for the bar exam for that matter. So it's relevant where you go, but try to get like a well-rounded experience and internships and clinical experience, and try to network with professors who are actually doing the work, not just sitting in the ivory tower, writing their articles, their theory. That's important too, but the practice is, I think, more important. And networking with people who are in the field. So much of people's career trajectory depends on who they meet, not necessarily because that person is going to get them a job, but they might give them an idea of something that they're interested in and be able to introduce them to somebody else who's going to help shape what that person ends up interested in doing.
All right, we seem to have an order now of how to when to respond, so I'm sticking to it. Yeah, I really appreciate both of what you said about ranking, and I think that's something that I speak to students about. That's something that I struggle with myself in terms of advising students, which is a big part of my current role, right? So what quote unquote matters versus maybe what should matter, right? Or what systems are we working in, and what's going to best benefit you. So I think I kind of land somewhere in the middle, right? As probably many of us do on most things, but sort of in terms of law school, it is such a specific market, right? And so and law school is very different than other graduate programs, and it's even wildly different than med school in many ways. I mean, I think there was a joke when I entered law school that I heard for the first time about something like, where does the student who ends up last in med school class go to be a doctor? And so, you know, it was sort of like in the law school world, it sort of mattered a little bit about, you know, where you're really investing your time and your money, because grad school is an investment from a very practical standpoint. Not every student has the resources to or wants to place their resources in something that's going to be worthwhile. But that being said, I absolutely agree with what both panelists said about sort of what, in terms of looking at grad schools, like what are they offering? What are their strong points, right? And so similar to Katie, I picked the University of Wisconsin Law School, because at that point I considered myself Wisconsinite and chose to commit to Wisconsin as a community. But the clinical experience that I would get, right? They had, they actually, they house the Innocence Project, the Wisconsin's arm of the Innocence Project. And I knew I wanted to be representing people in law school. And there is a student rule that allows Wisconsin's law students to sort of act as student attorneys. And so I knew that was really important to me to get that hands-on experience. And then lastly, I received a scholarship to go there, right? I mean, just being honest and transparent, I followed where, you know, where the financial aid was coming in. And that was a really important part for me, because I knew I wanted to work in the nonprofit world. And so I was looking at things like, I don't want to take out a bunch of loans. I don't want this to be a burden on me after I graduated. So I looked at funding resources within the law school as well. And then one last bit that's already kind of been said, but mentorship is so important. That's something that, you know, I didn't have any lawyers in my family. I didn't really have people to speak to about what law school would look like, and what lawyers actually did on a day-to-day basis, and tips for me in pursuing that path. So I think having resources on campus, I try to be a resource for the honor students, especially those discerning law school. But really having that community network and resources, I think, is huge when applying to grad school for that honest advice.
And I'll jump in. I applied to one master's program, and I went to that master's program. It was American University. It was mostly location was convenient for me. I knew I was in a job that I liked, and I didn't necessarily want to take myself out of the job market for a year and have the uncertainty of what was going to lie ahead. Honestly, I looked at the median salaries that graduates of the program that I was about to made, and I was already kind of making that. And I said, I think I'm going to stick to the security of holding onto my job while I do this part-time. So if you're thinking about part-time grad school, it's a lot of work at the time, but if you're committed to it, it's great. And like my organization was willing to work with me to make sure that I could get out of work at 4 p.m. to get to class on the days that I had night classes. So that worked out well, for me, I hadn't actually majored or minored in communications, but I found myself working for a while there in the communications field, and I said, I feel like I should maybe have a degree in this. So I learned a lot doing that program, doing part-time grad school. A lot of my fellow classmates were also working while we were doing the program, so we were bringing really like tangible examples into the classroom. So I honestly got to bring some of my like day-to-day questions to my professors, who oftentimes were adjunct professors who worked at communications firms in Washington, D.C., and got to hear my classmates kind of do the same about things that they had encountered in the professional world. So I definitely recommend grad school. If you know what you want to study, you're going to get a lot out of it. Definitely be yeah, find something that works for you. And I took a few years between undergrad, quite a few years between undergrad and grad school, which worked for me. So, but I think that's kind of, again, a personal decision.
Trying to find the mouse over here. But that is great advice, especially this is the type of advice that I wish I had. Before I started applying to grad schools, it's kind of late now, I'm in my last year, but, and I'm glad I'm at Marquette. So thanks everyone for that great feedback. So our next question is, what does work-life balance look like in your career, field, sorry. And how does it compare to the work-life balance you had as a student?
Answer first, I'll change the order. This was the question I was least looking forward to answering. I don't know if other folks who work in politics or just who follow politics have the same experience that I do, but work-life balance is tough. And I don't know if y'all are better in college than I was. In college, it was just a whole mix of classes and socializing and extracurriculars. And I don't know that I ever consciously was like, this is the balance I'm seeking in undergrad. It was just do what you feel like doing and don't do what you don't feel like doing, except for assignments, those have to be done. But I think especially if you're in a field you care about, sorry, that's my dog, especially if you're in a field you care about, it's hard to draw that line. So if anyone has advice for me, please share it.
Yeah, Colleen, I'm similarly struggling to answer the question. I think that one similarity that I see in sort of the undergraduate setting and in grad school and as a professional is if you are a person who likes to be engaged, which I'm guessing that most people who decided to tune into this on a, what day is it, Wednesday evening, are probably like fairly engaged and involved people. You're gonna just like be busy, right? And so it's a matter, like in college, it felt sort of more like you had a lot of choice about where you engaged. That when you're working, you don't always have choices. And because you have responsibilities, and but hopefully you find yourself doing things that you're really interested in and passionate about. As a lawyer, and in my field in particular, I mean, in all, I think for all lawyers, it can feel very intense, and it sort of depends on what area of the law or which like pillar of the legal infrastructure you go into. Law firms notoriously overwork their employees. There's the billable hour, and you have to bill a certain number of hours in order to hit your targets and move up at the law firm and get your bonus. That's not, I have never worked at a law firm. I was never interested in that model. I worked at an NGO for a while, and now I work at a corporation. I'm not sure the balance was any better at the NGO, but it was, I think that was because it was like a small, scrappy NGO that had lots of work to do and very few people to do it. You know, it was more of a like resourcing issue, and we're all invested, and so we worked a lot get it done. Now at the company that I work at, it's been interesting. I've been at the company for 4 years, and the company is Cisco. It's a huge Fortune 50 company. It's a technology company. We create and provide networking hardware like routers and switches that connect your computers to each other, Wi-Fi endpoints. We also have, yes, Curtis's telephone, we made that. We have WebEx, which is a collaboration software similar to Teams, which we're using now. We have a whole host of security products that you may be protected by without even knowing it. And so it's a huge company. And when I joined the company 4 years ago, and I had moved from Washington, D.C. to North Carolina, where I live now, and it was very much like 9 to 5. Like we came into the office, people were there usually by 9, by 5 o'clock, it was cleared out, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I could not tell if it was a Cisco thing or a North Carolina thing, because DC, as Colleen was saying, is like pretty intense place to work too. But over time, the balance has gotten harder. And so I've started, and I've also had 2 kids. So my life has gotten more complicated in those 4 years. But I've started to try to shift the way that I think about balance, and that it's not ever going to be a perfect balance. There are going to be times where I need to be more present at home or with my family, or with my friends or in my community. And there are going to be times when I need to be more present at work. And I need to be like pretty judicious in determining when do I need to ramp it up at work and the other stuff can wait, and when do I need to flip that. An analogy that someone shared with me that I have found helpful is imagine that you're juggling a whole bunch of balls, and some of the balls are rubber, and if you drop it, it's going to bounce. But there are other balls in that mix that are glass, and if you drop it, it's going to break. And you have to know which ones are rubber so you can drop them and it's going to be just fine, and which ones are going to be glass and it's going to break. That's going to break when you drop it. And last week I had a day where work was so intense, home life was really intense, and I actually said to my husband that night, gosh, I had a day where I felt like I was constantly evaluating which ball was the glass ball. That was my day. And this week, it's been a little bit more intense at home and in my family life. And to be honest, I've been like super distracted by it. And I have like dialed it back at work a little bit. Like I'm showing up, I'm going to my meetings, I'm getting done what I need to do, but I'm not pushing things forward in the way that I might otherwise. And one thing I feel really grateful for is that I have a very supportive manager who I could tell about this. And in my one-on-one with her today, I told her, like, I'm having this kind of week and I want you to know about it. And she just said, oh my gosh, I know what that's like. That's how my week was last week. And we talked about it. And that was really awesome to be able to have that conversation. So I know that was like pretty long-winded, but just to sum it up, like, I don't think I ever feel like I have perfect work-life balance, but I do feel like I'm getting better at making decisions about where I'm investing my time and trying to get comfortable with the fact that I can't always be doing everything just in the right way that I would like to.
I know in college, I definitely felt sort of decision overwhelm because there are so many paths available when you're a college student, or at least that's how many students can feel. And so in terms of managing time, I mean, I wasn't the best time manager in college. When I got to law school, I definitely was told treat it like a 9-to-5 job. And having gone straight through from college to grad school, that was a big transition for me. So I think, when I entered the legal field. I worked at a nonprofit law, and thank goodness I also wasn't held to sort of billable hours, Katie, similar to you. But it was a different environment. And what I learned right away was my job entailed thinking about and considering organizational needs and organizational support in a way that me as a college student, I didn't feel like my role, like Marquette depended on my role, right? I wasn't thinking about Marquette's budget when I was in college. But that's certainly something that I started considering working at a nonprofit. It was sort of part of my role. Not only was I representing people in court and had a very large active case list and client list, but I also was trying. I did my part to keep our organization afloat, right? And so I think that was a big difference for me in terms of balancing work and life. And I do think in terms of the balance, I definitely haven't, striked a perfect balance. And I think that, we think about our life including work, and our work also should include our life, right? And so for me, I know that I make so many accommodations for my work. And so I want to feel like my work would also help accommodate my life. And so transitioning from the legal field to working at Marquette University has felt different in that regard too. I think every organization has different levels of employees feeling resourced and empowered to ask for certain resources and support. And so that's been something that I'm considering now as a professional adult. And then also sort of the power of saying no. I had a really insightful student in my class the other day make a comment about, we really, a presentation on a workshop on how to say no would be so beneficial to us. And it really, resonated with me. So sort of learning how to create and hold boundaries is something that I'm still learning. And I think that that would be my advice for students as well, is that it's never really too early to think about how much we accommodate for things like work, and really learn to ask how work can accommodate our own lives. And I think, certainly certain things would make that easier on staff, including some things like guaranteed leave or workplace resources to help people feel empowered to ask for those resources.
Yeah, I still work in an institution as well. So like I feel like I've never left. It's weird. I was also when I went to Marquette, that was my first experience with Catholic school. My parents were both educators, and my mom and dad were like, if you're going to pay this much for school, you need to get the most out of it. So it was like at least 18 credit load plus all the activities. And like I was super over involved, which led me down to student affairs. So for me, life in college really is like the same now. I'm still going to the residence halls. I'm still going to the student centers. I'm still putting on the programming and stuff, but I think it's changed a little. I think, and honestly, the change has really come with a partner. My fiance has told me, he's like, why are you so accessible to these 18 to 21-year-olds all the time? He's like, why are they texting you at 8 o'clock? We're eating dinner. Like, why? Like I've never noticed how like in student life or in the work that we do, like students always have needs, and like our ability to want to say yes and to also fix it is also turned into just always being on. I'm available all hours of the day, and I think having a partner and having someone that can put you into that place of that's not normal, and being able to like also be like, huh, yeah, that is not normal. But to me, it's never been a balance, even in school and now past. It's really more of a negotiation for my lawyer folks out here. Like, it's that opportunity to really say, okay, work's going to be a lot this week, and like my personal life or at home and everything, and everything is going to kind of be on pause. And then there are going to be times where work is slow, and I don't need to get ahead. I can enjoy the slow because the storm is coming, and I need to be able to like have that time, and that's okay too. Like I think the other piece that I've always said to folks is in my work life, especially I work in DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. I live it as a queer Middle Eastern person that's very white passing. So like I live this life as well as work this life throughout the day. And so like there's never an off switch for that, because like within DEI work, like it's a constant, it's what I live with, it's what we do. But then to also have to shut that off and turn that into personal is very much a negotiation of like where do I stand up for that, or where is that not my job at this point? And so I have that conversation with my students as well of like, control what you can control. And I also say, like, I date myself by this, but I say we Tim Gun everything in this office. Like, we make it work. It's not the best, but like it will happen. And so when we talk about budgets, when we talk about work, when we talk about being personal, like, my fiance comes to some of my programs late in the evenings because that's like the time we get to spend together. And I was like, I'm so excited you're at the soccer game with free pizza with me, babe. And he's like, I hate this. But like, that's part of the, like, you sign on for that, I think, in this life and in this world. So I don't know. Yeah, it's a negotiation in my, like, I will never be balanced. That's just not me. So, and but I've owned that. And I think the more I realize that too, the less I let go of, like, how am I going to do this when I can just be like, you know what, it's okay. Like, it's truly okay. Like, as long as everyone's healthy, then we're fine.
Yeah, I think as a college student, definitely like finding that balance is hard because like school bleeds so much into like home life and everything. So you're just running back and forth, like home for 15, 20 minutes. So we'll see how that works continuing into the professional life, but thank you for that insight.
Yeah. And then also thinking of work life and home life balance. We really do appreciate y'all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here. It's definitely appreciated.
Yes. So now we have some more like individual questions, starting with Katie. How was the transition from being in the Midwest to moving away for law school? And what factors contributed to you staying in the Midwest for undergrad? And then do you have any advice for students who are contemplating moving for school or their career, either out to DC or anywhere else?
Sure. So as Anathea said, I stayed in the Midwest when I decided to go to Marquette. I grew up in the Chicago suburbs, Aurora, Illinois. I don't know if anyone is from that area. Any of our participants are from that area, but it's about 45 minutes west of Chicago. And I thought about going away for undergrad, but for a variety of reasons, I wanted to be in driving distance of home, but not so close that my mother would just show up unexpected for lunch. So which she threatened to do. So I decided to look at Marquette. I had heard great things about it. Immediately felt like it was the right fit when I went and visited there. And throughout my education at Marquette, I was happy to be within driving distance or a couple train rides. I could get on the Amtrak down to Union Station and then get on the commuter rail out to Aurora, where my parents live. And that was super convenient and nice for me to have that flexibility to do that. When it came time to apply to law schools, when I realized that was something I wanted to do, I thought about staying in the Midwest again, but I decided that, it just sort of hit me that I had lived within 2 hours of the place that I was born for my entire life. And I must have been like 22 at the time. So I wanted a different experience. And so I decided to apply mainly to law schools outside of the Midwest. And then because I was interested in that intersection of law and policy, going to school in Washington, D.C. was really compelling for me. And so that's how I landed on Georgetown. Plus, it was a Jesuit school. And Curtis, I mean, everything you were saying about drinking the Jesuit Kool-Aid, that was totally me as well. And I was like, oh, this social justice mission, like, I signed me up for Jesuit law school. I will say, Georgetown had a great social justice bent, but I did not feel the Jesuit themes as strongly in the law school setting as I did in the undergraduate setting, as an aside. But anyway, I was very happy that I decided to experience a different part of the country, a different culture. DC is a very strange place. I love it. I absolutely love it, but I would not say that it's like representative of the culture of like anywhere else in the country. And now I live in the South. I never thought I would live in the South. I live in Durham, North Carolina, which happens to be like very different also than most parts of the South. But I love the culture here, and I appreciate that now that I've gotten to experience a couple different settings, I guess, within the United States, and travel a bunch, and that's been great. So if you are deciding about where you want to go to graduate school, I do think that moving away and experiencing a different place going to school is a really good opportunity to do that. It's sort of time limited, right? Like you're not committing, well, never are you committing to live somewhere forever, but it's a nice way to kind of get a taste of a place, and you have a built-in community. Like that was one thing that was great about moving to DC for law school was, I made all my friends like in the Georgetown dorm, just like I did when I moved into McCormick for my freshman year at Marquette. Having that community of people who are also all starting this journey at the same time was just great. When I moved to North Carolina, I was not moving for school, and I actually was pretty anxious about that. Like, how am I going to meet people? And it was easier than I thought, but mainly because my husband and I decided that we were going to like just say yes to any invitation that we got for a while. And we made some really good friends by just like putting ourselves out there, so to speak. So I recommend it. I recommend trying different places and seeing where you find yourself, what you like. I always thought I would move back to the Midwest. Now I don't think I will do that, but maybe spending more time in the summer there would be nice because it gets very hot here. But yeah, I recommend trying different regions.
Thank you. I think that's good advice. Definitely a lot of Marquette students are from like suburbs of Chicago, the Midwest. So it can be good to explore outside of the Midwest for sure. All right, our next question.
As for Colleen, so you've been with the same organization for over 8 years. How do you navigate or measure like upward mobility at an organization, and what skills or motivations have contributed to your success at Network throughout the past 8 years?
So, I always said if I'm learning new things and like I'm challenged at my work, and like being presented with new challenges, then I'm in a good place. And a lot of folks, I think I decided that when I was earlier in my career out of undergrad, and a lot of people were like, after a year or two, they were going to a new place, and I kind of felt weird about it. But I think I wasn't bored in my job, so I guess that was the thing. Like if I'm ever bored, then it's time to look for a new job. So I haven't gotten bored yet, so I've stayed at the same organization. And it's a pretty small organization. And if you're at a smaller organization, there's a little bit more room, I think. Well, maybe not. Maybe size doesn't always correlate, but for like new ideas or for new even positions, like if you like propose it, sometimes your leadership is willing to go with it. Yeah, for like election 2020, our press secretary was like, I think that actually what's needed is this whole other thing. And we ran with it. So that was an exciting adventure. And but at the same time, like for me, it's been interesting over the years, just with seniority and getting promotions, there's more responsibility and there's like more that you have influence over. So that's kind of a good way to measure upward mobility. And it's been nice to feel like with the time and effort that I've put in that I have something valuable to bring to the table when some of those bigger decisions are being made. And the skills I think that have helped me, well, first of all, I would not discount like just general people skills. Getting along with your coworkers is really central. I think like I'm always at the end of the day, I just want to, you know, not have like a bad interaction with folks. And then to the extent possible. And then just like if there's a problem, you propose a solution at least. You're not just like, this is a problem and I don't know, someone else deal with it. Like at least say, and maybe here's an idea, like other people might have better ideas or they might have an adjustment to your idea, but I think, you know, the ability, like the willingness to always be looking for ways to like solve that problem or address it has been something that I've always tried to bring to the table. So I would say that for y'all, and be willing to learn new skills. I mean, I was working on the communications team when COVID shut down all the in-person gatherings. So I was talking to some of my colleagues who work in communications various places, and we were all like, what are you guys going to do for online events and Zoom and a streaming platform for, you know, online speaking engagements and things like that. So it definitely was a learning experience, and none of us threw in the towel. It wasn't perfect, but we tried new things and got through it. And yeah, so those are some of the skills, I guess.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like no matter how long like you're at someplace, there's always something new to learn because things are forever changing. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Okay, our next question, Curtis, you've answered this a little bit, but you triple majored in a variety of areas. What helped make the decision for you to go into education, and how has your background contributed to your time in student affairs?
Well, my parents hated it because they are educators, and they were like, you're going into business, you're going to be okay. And then I was like, just kidding, I want to go to education. And they were like, no, but like, we get it. So it was one of those pieces. And honestly, it sounds more like exciting than it is and like more work. But like in IB, international business, and then also in supply chain was so new at the time. Again, dating myself, like it's obviously it runs the world right now, but like that was like not a normal like major, I guess, at the time. Like it was just kind of like people could minor in it. They were starting that major process as well of operations and connecting it to the engineering school. And like honestly, with the way Marquette handles their supply chain program is like top rate in the country. Like it's phenomenal. The work that I see done over there. But I would say because of that, like I had to take a bunch of classes that really kind of overlapped and counted for a lot of different things. So that was nice. And then specifically with the Arabic, that was the first year that we had it, was my first year on campus. And then we just kind of built that as a train as we went. Dr. Uthman and I just sat down. I was like, she's like, what's next? And I was like, I don't know, you're the teacher. Like, let's keep going. So it was an awesome experience, honestly. But I think I would say my love for education also stemmed in being able to do a lot of the core work outside of the business school. I think that was super important. And I think that's what I also love about a liberal Jesuit education, is like that push, regardless of what you're going into, to really lean into the arts in itself. I took some classes that I never thought I would. I was the only male in a women in Islam class, and like I think it made everybody upset at first, but then like we had really amazing discussions afterwards of like how to engage more and stuff, and it was great. I've had an amazing experience, but I would say education was the path because of my involvement on campus. And I will also say, instead of a traditional student affairs program, I looked for a curriculum and instruction program because I truly thought I was going to go finish my master's and then go right to my doctorate. And then I was like, that's so funny. It's not happening for a while. I need to get away from school. But I picked curriculum and instruction for the sense of like wanting to build curriculum a little more. I teach some classes here on campus, and I do enjoy that aspect of being in the classroom. So that's kind of what led me down, I guess, that path.
Thank you. I always get a joy because I'm in student affairs as well. So like hearing the path that people go down always is like super random, and I love it. Like, how'd you get here?
Yeah, I'm not a hugger, and like most of my class was, and they're just like, why? Like, I was like, I remember business kid at heart, supply chain brain, but like understand the value of soft skills. I would also say part of my education degree, like going to grad school for student affairs, I worked in a bar too, and I would say people skills in the service industry was so important to my development as a human being. Like being able to engage, like Colleen was saying, is like to have really good conversation or just like enjoy your coworkers and small talk, like especially after these years of COVID, like that is such an underrated skill that people bring to like the office that is so important to maintain. So if you have any time to like continue that or get face to face with folks and have that opportunity, highly recommend. And then everyone should work in service in general at some point in their life. Just like it's a great way to learn about yourself.
Thank you for that. All right, so our next question is for Sophia. So this question, so how has your transition been from legal background to now working in higher education? And where do you see yourself still applying your degree to your roles in the honors office?
Yes, thanks for that question. And also, Curtis, I think I've called you Taylor like twice during this panel, so my apologies.
I literally have 4 first names. I totally don't mind.
All right. Thanks. So yeah, in terms of my transition out of the legal field into higher ed, I wasn't, I didn't really anticipate that when I entered the legal field that I would be doing that. But I was coming up on year 4 of practicing civil legal aid, and I was, I definitely did face some court representation burnout. At first, I sort of tried to stifle that, like I'm too new, I'm too young to feel burnout, and then I had to take a really pause, like a serious pause, and think about, where are my skills best being used, and where does my passion lie, and is there a path for me in this specific organization that I can see clearly that will be something I want to be doing in the next few years. And I didn't see that at my current firm for many reasons. I loved the work that we did, and I love that firm so much. I just didn't see the next step for me. So I had to be really honest about that, and that was a tough period of taking stock and inventory. I knew that. So during my time at Legal Action, I also created an internship program that involved Marquette undergrads, actually. And I loved that internship mentorship experience. And I realized that a lot of Marquette undergrads that were interning at my firm sought out mentorship in ways that I did when I was an undergrad. And so I felt like, number one, I loved working with students, but then I felt like, okay, so there might be a path for me in higher ed. And I think it also opened up opportunities like teaching. I'm teaching for the first time this semester, which is amazing. And I just never thought that I could be in a classroom after going to law school necessarily. So that was a cool opportunity. But it was scary. And I did know, I think I read a statistic once that less than 3% of US attorneys are Latina, like Latin American women. And as a Latin American woman, like I had to answer some tough questions when leaving the legal field. I felt a burden. I felt guilt, to be honest. So I had to work through that and make sure that I was doing the best thing for me. So the way I see my advocacy continue at Marquette is kind of a clear line. I mean, I'm working with students who, a lot of them are discerning law school, but even sort of more broadly, going back to sort of community engaged skills or people skills, I love working with people, and I love working with students and just kind of being standing in solidarity with them as they navigate these years at Marquette has been really rewarding for me. And I think it's a really cool intersection to sort of work with students before they get out into the workforce. I think that's been really cool to see, and I think a lot can happen, and a lot of benefit can be made from those mentoring relationships. And then lastly, I still keep my law license active, and so I volunteer at the Marquette legal clinics. I also volunteer with my previous law firm. They have a lot of volunteer opportunities, and so I don't see that separate from my work. I see that as part of my work, and I'm still sort of carving that out in the future. I think, at a Jesuit institution, I find that we tell students a lot about how important community-facing work is, but I think oftentimes that space for staff to model that is underemphasized. And so I see that as being part of my role. And then I also see my role at Marquette. I mean, as legal advocacy or just advocacy in general at times. I mean, I speak with students who are dreamers. I speak with first gen students. I speak with, students who are really trying to navigate a system that is sort of designed to be supportive in many ways, but then in other ways is lacking. And so using those advocacy skills with students is, again, just sort of a through thread for me.
Awesome, thank you. It's very cool that you are able to like see where the two career fields and paths intersect, but also like keep them both going in your current position. So we have a little bit of time left. We have one closing question, but first I think we should see if anyone else has a question, either anyone on Teams or here. Any questions from students? Yeah.
Oh, seconds. Okay.
Oh no.
Oh, yes. You can. Oh, they're gonna see me like all of it. So let me go this way. Can you see you? Sorry, I've been wanting to do that.
My question is, what was the biggest thing that you took away from your education at Marquette as like you discerned your like for the career processes and like as you've like switched careers potentially and everything? But yeah, what do you see like Marquette having instilled in you?
I would say it really is the social justice piece. What I have learned working in another Jesuit institution, and people knock on me all the time for going to Marquette instead of Creighton anyway. And it's funny that Katie says Georgetown doesn't have the same feel. We joke all the time that Georgetown is a little more progressive than the rest of the Jesuits, even for the Jesuits. But I loved it there. We take students there every fall break. But I would say honestly, it's the social justice. I remember the dean of the Arts and Sciences School had her contract rescinded after they found out she was LGBT, and we were in the streets, literally sitting in the streets, ready to get arrested if that were to happen. And like, I don't see that tenacity or that commitment to social justice in other places that I do at Marquette. Like, students not only passionately believe and listen, but they take action in a way that I don't see here at Creighton or at other schools, or even just at other like bodies or institutions in itself. Like we truly care about margins and the actual aspects of inclusion and diversity and equity. Like, I've never seen that in other places after graduating. Like we truly put ourselves in between that injustice at Marquette, and that's something that you can really hang your hat on as students there.
Yeah, I think for me it's very, very similar, Curtis. Like that, definitely the social justice aspect was very strong. And like I said earlier, it kind of set me on a path. I think the other thing that was really important at Marquette, and that maybe this echoes some of your comments, but that I've been thinking about even in like the last couple of days pretty intensely, is just the sense that as a student at Marquette, you're not just a student at Marquette, but you're part of a broader community. And I remember like people talking about how significant it was that there wasn't a wall around Marquette's campus. Like, I don't know if y'all have heard that, but apparently at one point there was a proposal to like close Wisconsin Avenue and put a wall around the campus. And there was a decision not to do that because of this like desire to be part of the community, and service learning opportunities and things like Midnight Run, which I know Colleen did. That like part of your education was about being a member of the community and taking the things that you're learning and the values that are being instilled as, like, let's be honest, that was part of the education, was the values piece, and bringing that into the community. And that is something that when we chose to move to Durham, to be honest, like one of the reasons that I wanted to live here was when we came down to visit, I got this feeling like it felt physical, maybe it was just emotional, feeling being here where I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of Milwaukee. Like there's something familiar here, and it's about the community and the way that this place is. and just like a desire to have that part of my life again, and to be not just like an employee at my job, but also participating in ways that I did not really do that in DC. And it's not because those things weren't available there, but it's just a very different place. So yeah, I think the social justice element, but also that very strong emphasis on the outside community as part of what you're doing.
I'll share the social justice theme. I think for me, it's pretty day to day that my Marquette education comes into play. The organization I work for was founded by Catholic sisters. So not that Jesuit connection, but a ton of folks on staff are Jesuit educated, and we oftentimes partner with different groups. And I will shout out the Ignatian Family Teach-In for Justice, which happens every fall. That was a big part of my Marquette experience and coming to DC and doing lobby visits, which is organized by the Ignatian Solidarity Network. So yeah, just having all of those different experiences to integrate. For me, my poli-sci major, or that was a minor technically. International affairs was my major, but a lot of poli-sci classes with the social justice aspect, which oftentimes was not always in a faith context, but also the campus ministry experiences. That combo kind of that I experienced and like swum around in for 4 years at Marquette definitely led me to where I am today. And just like those same systems, and oftentimes systems that exploit people and exploit communities, are at play in the international, domestic, local, and interpersonal levels. And the Marquette education, I think, helped me to see all those different levels where that's at play. And don't discount the personal level. I would say at Marquette, people saw me as a person, not a perfect person. None of us are perfect, but as a person with something to contribute. And that was huge. Like, and we all have things that we need to learn and grow and learn from our mistakes and be better people every single day. But you all have something really important to contribute to the world. And it was definitely my experiences at Marquette that helped me see that about myself. So I hope y'all are having the same experiences and getting ready to go out into the wider world with that certainty in your hearts and in your spirit.
I definitely can't top that, but I'll share definitely the sort of praxis model of theory and learning and then application in your community. That again, social justice piece was so valuable to me. And that's when I knew my research, my field, whatever I pick, doesn't have to be separate from the community that I'm living in, especially those who are marginalized, and it shouldn't be separate, right? So that I will thank Marquette forever to sort of giving me that framework and language that I needed as an undergrad, that I was looking for, that I don't think you can get at just any college, to be honest. And then, yeah, just the personal aspect. I felt sort of seen at Marquette, and that helped me come back to Marquette as a staff member, right? I mean, when they were hiring, it was like, oh, I know Amelia. I know that, like, I know these people. This was my experience in honors. This is how I can envision it being better or expanding upon these things. And so I felt it was such a personable experience joining Marquette as a professional. And I wouldn't have gotten that experience applying for any other sort of higher ed job, to be honest. So, yeah.
Great, thank you all for your answers. Did you have a question as well? Okay, not anymore. Any other questions? If not, we can move on to our closing question. No? Oh,
I
yeah.
have one. If we are running out of time, not everyone has to respond. A pattern I noticed was a few of you kind of shifted into career fields that weren't necessarily directly correlated to your major. I know that's something for me that is kind of like nerve-wracking to think that I might arrive at my senior year and be like, oh no, I want to go, completely different direction. So like, how did you kind of navigate that? Were there like challenges associated with it?
I think the hardest one is really the conversation with yourself, because at the end of the day, you're probably thinking about or discerning on something that is a much better fit or a passion area or something that you truly want to do. I will say, after being a business major and now in education, there's a value to that I didn't necessarily see at first. Being able to see the numbers or look at something more critically or more analytically than the feels of that some of my colleagues have. But I would also say Marquette prepares you with such a holistic education that it really gives you that opportunity that you walk out as a jack of all trades still and a master of one that you truly were passionate about, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't lean into something that you were dabbling into and be very successful in it because of the way that you're prepared at Marquette.
Transferable skills. Transferable skills are so real. Learn to talk about them in interviews. But yeah, I think that it's scary, but it shouldn't be scary that you might shift into a different career path. There's actually so many more jobs out there than you certainly knew about when you were a high school senior, thinking about what you wanted to major in college and what college you were even going to go to, and throughout the 4 years, right? Like, and the internships are great at kind of opening your eyes to that, but it's not until you start like in the professional world that you're going to see what jobs even exist and what jobs probably have been created since, 4 years ago. So a lot of what I've done in the communications field is like, you can learn it on certificates, you can learn it via webinars. There's a ton of that kind of like external education pieces that are available for a lot of different things. And if you do have that curiosity, like Curtis said, like if it's something you're passionate about, or maybe you even have a knack for it, like it should, fingers crossed, slide into place. But there's a lot you can do in a lot of these fields. And like Katie said, she works for a corporation now. And like in the politics world, you don't have to be a legislative staffer to work in politics. Like, I'm on the communications team. Even the people who are on our development team, they have a real knack for fundraising and connecting with people and giving them the opportunity via donating to network to have an impact on politics. And they are passionate about politics too. And my mentor, when I was in my master's in communications, she worked in the business field of National Geographic, but she had that communications background because she had to know what she was filling out the invoices for the Nat Geo stories, for reporters and for writers and photographers and things like that. So there's so many different job opportunities out there. There's a lot. And yeah, good luck.
Yeah, and maybe this is like a good segue into also the closing question that I think y'all had planned for us, but I totally agree. And I think when I was a student, I felt this pressure to know like what's my career going to be, and maybe that was because the model I had was with my parents, and my mother also was an educator and like always was an educator and loved her career, and my father worked in business but was at the same company for he started there like the week I was born or something silly. So my whole life he had been at the same place, and I just thought like, okay, this is the model. Like, I'm now about to graduate. I need to know, like, what am I going to do? What is my career path going to be? And my experience has been totally different. And each job that I've had, I've worked at a very small NGO. I've interned at larger NGOs. I worked at Yahoo, which is not that large of a company, but sort of like known. And now Cisco is massive. We have like 80,000 employees. So I've worked in lots of different contexts and in lots of different roles. Like originally when I went to law school, I thought I'm going to litigate. I wanted to be like Amal Clooney. I'm going to litigate these like really compelling human rights cases. And then I interned at an organization that did that. And I was like, this sucks, like, excuse me, but it was like so boring. It was so boring. And the cases were super interesting, but like the actual facts were very interesting, but the work was so boring. Like they were doing I was researching these like procedural legal questions, and I just wanted to like bang my head against the wall because I was like, I'm staring at my computer. I'm not talking to another person. I'm not dealing with the facts that are interesting. But I had to research like whether Florida, New Jersey, Ohio, or New York law would apply to a case that took place in Colombia. I mean, it was just so boring. And so that was what helped me realize, like, oh, okay, I'm really passionate about this area of the law, but like doing it in this way is not for me. And that led me to something else that was more in the policy field. And I loved that work. And it was more, much more like getting your hands dirty, we were trying to promote legislation on crimes against humanity, which we still don't have in the United States. But that was like really interesting coalition work. And it was a mentor there who said, you're doing this. What we were doing had to do with how corporations respect human rights. And she said, to be really effective in this work, you would benefit from having some experience at a corporation and understanding, like, what are those conversations like in a company? What are the factors that they're grappling with? Like, why are we having conversations outside in the way that we are? And so she sort of planted this seed in me to, maybe go get some experience at a company. And this opportunity opened up at Yahoo, and it was on a human rights team. There's a history there, but I decided, well, if I'm going to work at a company, which was something I never thought I would do, if I'm going to work at a company, I want to do it in a human rights role. And what I learned was I actually love working in a company. I love it. And it's because of the way that I get to do the work and the impact that I'm able to see. And working at a large company for me is compelling, because I feel like I can make these changes at a company at Cisco and at Yahoo before, change a policy or change the way that we do something or how we're transparent about something. And it has these really broad impacts. And then work with others in industry to try to bring others along too. So it's, but my job is like not for everybody either. So my sort of advice to you is, like, don't feel like you have to be locked in on a particular career path or a particular field. Like, there are so many adjacencies, and you can pivot, to something that's a little bit different, or even if you're working on the same issue, pivot to working at it from a different angle or in a different way. Like, we need all of it. There's so many ways to do this work. And the best thing that you can do, and this I think goes back to the work-life balance piece too, is to find the niche that's perfect for you, right? That you get to work on issues that you care about, that are meaningful, that give you some sort of like purpose, that allow you to use your strengths and your talents, and to do that in a way that like you find interesting, and you go home at the end of the day, hopefully energized most days. It won't be every day, but most days. And that's a journey. Like that takes learning about yourself and trying different things. So there you go. That's my advice to you.
Thank you. I think we're gonna move to the closing question, and we only have a little less than 5 minutes left. So just a few words. What is one piece of advice that you have for students who want to make a positive difference with their career?
Okay, I can start this one off. So yeah, I mean, I think what Katie just shared too is so important. And I think just being proximate to the community that you're in, I think that's such an important factor, that we don't operate in silos, even if sometimes it feels like that. Our decisions affect each other, right? And so I think remembering that as a Marquette student, and there's certainly resources at Marquette to kind of connect students to be that bridge. And then that also going sort of bridging that last question of there is no single major for a job. Like, there is no single major for med school. There is no single major for law school. That does not exist. And so again, sort of transferable skills and being open to interdisciplinary ways of learning.
I would say from my perspective is being authentic. Like being your authentic self and bringing that to work is huge, and in your decision making. I'd say the other piece is always assume positive intent from folks. So making sure that with your education and understanding where we come from a holistic presence and then also what the values that Marquette instills in you, you have that opportunity to really just assume everyone is at the table for the right reasons and then operate in that way and authentically.
I would say if you have any perfectionist tendencies like me, working in this kind of a field, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I hear that from what, yeah, Curtis said and Katie too. Like you have to accept that some days are not gonna go, you're not gonna get the project done to the standard that you would like it to get done, but the work you're doing is impactful and it is better to just to do it than to not do it and sit on it for forever and never let it see the light of day. And don't be too inflexible. People will have ideas that you might not agree with, but like collaboration is good. And mistakes are okay too. It's not going to be the end of the world. You can always adjust. You can always apologize to someone if needed. It's not the end of the world. And that's my theoretical advice. My practical advice is have Google open during meetings because you don't know how many times people are like, who's the chairman of this? Like they ask a simple question that's Googleable and you look so smart when you can tell the answer. If it's not like totally rude that you're like on your computer, but like a little tip.
I'll just say my last answer is what I would say.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time out of your evenings to talk to us. We really appreciate you. And thank you to everyone that came. We appreciate you all too. Hopefully this was insightful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for
Thank
coming.
Thanks,
Alice.
everyone.
Enjoy Marquette. Eat a cheese curd for me.